we just recorded a podcast and we were a little bit upset about how serious we were. And I made the point that I got from Blind Boy, our mutual friend who you love and I love. I jest. I'm a bigger fan than my counterpart here. Blind Boy talks about how he abhors the solemnity around the conversation of emotional well-being, like, and how serious we all take it, like.
Absolutely,
and,
yeah.
You know, and I was kind of frustrated myself. I feel like maybe I was pointing the direction of the conversation in a serious tone, which isn't what I want to do. I want it to be a bit of crack. Do you know what I mean?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So
just take the piss out of me all you want.
Yeah, like it's funny. Like, I feel that I've missed something. Do you know?
Yeah.
I really feel that I missed something in our initial conversation. I loved it. I thought it was very good. I'm delighted that you enjoyed it. But from, let's say, the host's perspective, I was like, I should have. I needed to provoke him more. I needed to get him to reveal something else. Like, but I'm wondering how. Like, I'm thinking, you know, when I came in today and talked about hosting the podcast, you were very nervous.
I was. It surprised me even, because I've done a lot of things. Well, a lot of podcasts, but maybe, you know, I haven't opened up with kind of this sort of stuff really, or going on air. You know, I don't know what the element was, but that probably transferred to you, and then we were both kind of quite serious talking about like serious stuff, but we probably were much too, like, kind of in that mindset of you know, thinking too much about all the answers.
I suppose I fall victim to maybe worrying about being a bit too articulate maybe at times, and I slow my speech and I really pronounce my words and enunciate them, and I'm like, that's not necessarily who I am.
We all know you're from Avon, but
on an interpersonal. Yeah, like I'm you know, to many people, very funny. One of my best friends from college, when he met me, he thought I was an arsehole because he was brought up in Foxrock, and he's relatively polished, and, you know, here's this shit kicker from Nav and wearing a purple and yellow outrageous Tones jersey, Gawhead, you know, from the country, like absolute farmer. And but sure, once I heard him speak, he was, you know, Southside ruggers, tough, bet he's an arsehole. You know, and it wasn't true at all.
You're both arseholes, yes.
Yeah, we loved each other. I don't know. I just I don't want to add to the excessive seriousness problem of the issue, but at the same time, I want to get my guests to reveal something they haven't shared before.
Okay, ask away.
So yeah, getting back to my original, you were really nervous when I came in. Was there something you were particularly nervous I'd get out of you?
I don't even think that was it. I think just the general whole experience. I was wondering, you know, probably like how you'd come across or what. Like, I hadn't a clue what you were going to ask me, so I was probably, I don't think it was anything in particular that I was like, oh shit, what if you asked me that? But it was kind of just the general. I don't know, I often get like that before any of these sort of things, but yeah, particularly there for about 5 minutes just before we started, I was feeling I was feeling quite nervous.
Yeah, and it's funny, you joked, and it was funny. Like, you know, the lads are going to work. We're recording this conversation in your house in Dublin, where you live with, you know, mutual friends of both of ours, and you joked, oh, geez, what's going to happen in an hour's time? You know, he's going to pop in, and you know, I'll be on your lap in tears, and I'll just be rubbing the back of your head, like, telling you it's okay, like, you know. And when you said that, I was kind of thinking, Jesus, is there a really emotional and sensitive side to David that I haven't, you know,
haven't scratched the surface on?
Yeah. And I suppose that it's important that we can joke about our emotional selves, you know, and not take ourselves too seriously. It's a serious matter that we reveal ourselves, but it's not too serious about how we do it. You know, there's some funny shit that can come out of, you know, the very, very situations with significant gravity. Like, for instance, I know some people, when they talk about their elderly relatives, you know, who might be suffering with terrible neurobiological disorders like Parkinson's or dementia or Alzheimer's, and they say some funny fucking shit.
Oh, absolutely. You have to see the funny side. I remember one of our good mutual friends, actually, his grandmother was she's an elderly lady, and she was kind of suffering, from, I'm not actually sure what the diagnosis was, but I think kind of Alzheimer's, kind of, the symptoms of that, confused and a bit like forgetful and stuff. But we called to visit her very randomly one day and rang the doorbell, and it took a quite a while to answer. And she said afterwards she thought it was the toaster making the noise. We thought it was hilarious, but it's one of those situations where you have to just laugh. Yeah,
but you could get caught up in, oh, she thought we were the toaster. Isn't that so sad? No, it's fucking hilarious. Yeah. And it's funny to realise that that's hilarious. That's okay to laugh at those experiences.
Absolutely, but that's the same as you say, if you're worried about being too solemn about mental health and all, it is good to laugh at different things. You're not laughing at it, you're laughing at these experiences, and it's a good way of people to, we're talking earlier about seeing the humour and things and how important it is. I'm definitely a big believer in that, and it's definitely a very Irish thing, the dark humour, like the gallows humour and stuff like that. Yeah. Which I think it's probably, for me, it's a way cope with things. You make some stupid mistake and you take the piss out of yourself, or but I think that kind of helps you cope with things, see the funny side of things. Or Irish people very much would laugh at it, saying you're some fucking idiot, Pat, for whatever you did, the stupid thing you did.
But sure,
once it's in good taste, in good spirit, it's.
I don't know. Thankfully, I don't really know any homophobic people, but they will say to me, oh, do you like talking about emotional well-being? You big gaylord. Oh, you touch at your feelings. Oh, you're such a sissy. As if, that has anything to do with being gay or being feminine. It doesn't. As if those were bad things either, But I think it's funny to, once you're not withholding someone from expressing themselves, it's important to be able to have a laugh about it.
Absolutely.
It's very true. It's true that I'm a very emotional person who's in touch with his sensitive side, let's say. And, classically, that's a pretty funny thing,
Yeah.
And I don't want people to when they see me to think, oh, geez, there's Pat Noise, and he's a great lad. He talks a lot about the mental health. Yeah, he's a good lad. Yeah. No, I don't want people to be that solemn
or treating you differently because of it, unless it's required. People knowing that you might be going through a little bit of tough time, so to put in not the extra effort, but to just make sure touch base and all that, see you're all right. But you don't want it, as you said, you don't want people to be like, there's Pat, poor Pat's fierce fucking mixed up.
Fierce Tower. He's awful Tower.
He's an awful miserable fella, that Pat.
Yeah, because I hope that that's not who I am, and it's all right to be miserable as well, and I think trying to remove those connotations around the wide variety of human experiences, it's being miserable isn't a bad thing, or he's he's a bit panicky, or he's a bit jittery. As if
jittery,
that's grand, and in some instances it might be funny. I know myself. I've had loads of panic attacks, and I can kind of picture myself. When I experience a panic attack, I can't talk. I basically lose the ability to speak, which is probably sometimes pretty funny.
Yeah, I can't imagine that.
You can imagine flat talking shit all the time. Jeez, I should have more panic attacks. Get me to stop talking.
Any chance of one now? No?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I can almost imagine now in a sitcom, so someone practically turns into somebody who, a dumb person, they just stop speaking, and that's kind of a funny thing. Panic attacks aren't necessarily, people say there's a cliche of that's no laughing matter. Everything's a laughing matter.
Yeah,
it's grand. It's important to be able to laugh with these experiences, because it takes their power away from us. Depression is a fucking powerful thing. But if we can take that gravity away from it, it just becomes like a normal thing which people experience, to some degree or another.
I'm not sure if normalise is the right term, but you do want people to feel that.
You want to know
that it is not an everyday thing, but that it is a common thing, and they're not, there's nothing wrong about feeling like that. I think everyone has phases where, I don't know, I don't like putting labels on things like depression or whatever, but like, you have your ups and your downs or whatever, but it is natural, and that probably is the important message that, like,
I want, one of the big goals of the whole your emotional well-being project is normalising the human condition. Normalising what's going on in everybody's minds. We share all our experiences, really. I feel like there is a continuum of human experience which we all are placed upon, so we are all able to relate with kind of everything. Like, when somebody tells you, oh, they're sad, you don't say, oh, sadness, I've never experienced that, I don't know what you're talking about. It's when somebody says they've been diagnosed as having, suicidal ideation and, major depression, you might know what that feels like, but you know what feeling sad feels like, and you know what despair and hopelessness feels like, because these are universal emotions. And I don't know, I think there's a people always talk about this stigma, there is a stigma around those things, because you think, oh, that's so alien, I don't know anything about that. You know loads about that. Just think about the normal emotions you experience, but ramped up. Like, you've felt hopeless, your fucking day was going shit and you thought it couldn't get any worse. Well, imagine that was your life. That's what it's like. You have some insight into that,
But then I think as well, you don't need to be the expert. Like, it can be simple. Like, in my experience, like, it's simple. Your friend, gives you a phone call or says, come on, let's go out, get a bit of food, or, or we go for a pint, or whatever it is. Like, do you want to come over, play FIFA, talk shite for the evening, It can be little things like that where they don't even have to, it's not like you need to have this psychological understanding of the exact thing. It can be the little things or whatever that, comment from a friend or whatever. They don't have to understand exactly your thing. Once they are aware that there's something wrong, there's thousands of different ways probably you can help someone in that thing.
How do you feel about implicit and explicit expression? So, sometimes, let's say you've had a terrible day at work. You come in the door, your head's hanging low. You fling your keys on the ground and you fucking saunter into the kitchen just with shrugged shoulders, and it's clear from your body language that you're not feeling good. You can't sit down and you eat your dinner. And there's lots of things playing in your mind, but you don't express yourself. You don't articulate your feelings to those around you. But if those around you have any insight into your character, they know that something's amiss, and they try and help you. Do you think in those instances it's very important to articulate yourself, or to articulate your emotions, or is it okay?
Probably depends, I think, on your personality and situations and stuff. But like, I'd probably be like, I'm the type, I come in here, I'd say, how was work? Shite. Like, it wouldn't be a case of like, let's internalise it or like go and stress. Like, I was saying earlier, like, great support network and stuff. Like, lads would be quite open with each other, and obviously family and girlfriend and all that stuff. So you have people to talk with it. So like, and it would be a thing of like the humour, like even with the lads, how was work? You could have a great day and you'd come in and you'd say shite, like,
it's that
Irish thing, exactly, like just complaining for the, it could be the bank holiday weekend, you're still giving out that you've worked on Tuesday, like, it's kind of the Irish outlook in ways. But I would say in general, if you can at all talk about it, it helps. Because people can help you, or like a few words of encouragement or whatever, or someone might turn around to you and say, look, I had a terrible day as well, and you can commiserate with each other or laugh about it, or compare or whatever. So stuff like that is important, but like, it doesn't have to be a big serious thing. Like, I think casual, like, it can be as casual as, well, obviously if you have something to express you can say it, but it doesn't have to be. I think people think sometimes like, oh, I can't talk about this, like it's such a big deal or whatever, but people around you have their own things going on and stuff as well, so they will understand. And
it isn't a big deal. I don't mean that to underplay the seriousness and the intensity of your experience, but what's not a big deal is sharing it. It's kind of a big deal when you don't share it.
Exactly. It's only going to build up then.
I definitely agree with that. I asked you that question about implicit and explicit communication of struggles, and I found it in my experience, it almost always has to be explicit. And maybe that's part of my personality, because if I'm not explicit, I come across as maybe guarded, and people don't want to kind of maybe help out if somebody's kind of back us up, you know. So I suppose it probably differs on a case by case basis. So for me, it's very important to explicitly express it. And I suppose because of my personal experience, I'm always encourage people to explicitly express things, because people aren't mind readers, you know. Ultimately,
absolutely,
it's until somebody makes noises with their face and that lands on your ears, they're not going to know what you're thinking.
I think it works though even the other way. And like, I probably wouldn't have been great for it when I was younger. Even the opposite thing. Not even when you're expressing when you're feeling down, whatever. But the opposite when you're feeling happy, or you're pleased with someone. Like, you know, that stereotype thing of, you know, saying to your friends, like, you know, inverted commas, sappy shit, like, you know, like, or thanks for helping me out with that, or it was great, or like, I really appreciate you coming up to see me, or, you know, your family, all the things they do for you. Like, I think that's equally important. Like, people say, oh, like, share things when you're down, but it's definitely important as well when things are going well to express that to the people around you.
Yeah, kind of that expression of gratitude. My mum has a phrase for having an attitude of gratitude. I'm generally not fond of rhyming 3-word phrases like it, but it's a good one in this context. It's important to be grateful to those who are so helpful, you know. One thing that I've tried to do a lot of lately is exercising grace. To me, I intuit it as kind of reaching out to people from totally out of context. So, for instance, oftentimes I randomly think of people that I significantly care about, and it's totally random. It appears totally random. So imagine I didn't talk to you for a year, and 6 months, 7 months down the line, I was like, James Smith, I had a random flashback to the conversation we had, and it really informed my own emotional well-being, and I just wanted to say, you know, I'm really grateful, and you know, I hope all is well, and I'm excited to see you soon or something. That is a sound thing to do. That's a great message to receive. Everybody's a winner. Yeah. You feel good for sharing something meaningful to someone else, and they feel good for reading it. It's a bit mad, but like, it's great.
Absolutely.
There's a teacher that you love from your primary school, and they've really inspired you. They inspired you to be a journalist. You haven't seen them in 15 years, and you go, oh, I want to find their postal address and write them a letter. That's a really, really sound thing to do. And you can imagine the meaning that will bring to that person's life, and the joy that you will get from putting that in the postbox and kind of saying, I'm a legend. That's class. That's a brilliant thing to do. So I try and acknowledge, like what you said, acknowledge the greatness in others, and be really genuinely thankful, and express that thanks and joy on an everyday level. We're very, it comes natural to us in the culture we live in to kind of express, to wear a smile on our face, basically, to, you know, laugh when we think something's funny, to smile when we think something's, you know, smile-worthy.
You haven't seen me first thing in the morning.
But then, but for whatever reason, we hold back tears. What? You know, what's that about? So if you feel like crying, cry. Like, what's the issue with crying? Do you know?
Yeah.
It's just the flip side of that expression that we were talking about there. You know, it's important to express yourself when you're feeling happy. It's very important to kind of express yourself when you're feeling sad. Like, oh no, I'm going to really, you know, rub my eyes very hard here so the water doesn't come out of my tear ducts. Who gives a fuck? I cry all the time. It's great. I'm actually expressing myself. I'm not withholding that pain, you know. But it's funny. There was a guy. I went down to see Blind Boy in Limerick, your boyfriend, and because you love him so much.
Yeah, he's great.
And before he came on, he had a poet. He had a couple of spoken word pieces, and he was a kind of a rough inner city Limerick guy, real character, brilliant dude, and his name was Dirt,
Dirt.
D-U-R-T, I think his name was. That was his stage name.
Yeah.
And it's either D-I-R-T or D-U-R-T.
Was he Muck?
His third poem was about suicide. And it was about suicide from the perspective of the Shannon River. And it was talking, basically, because so many people have killed themselves by jumping into the river or drowning themselves because it has an outrageously strong current, and if you end up in the middle of that and you're not willing to live, or you don't want to live, like you're going to die. I was in tears. It moved me so fucking much, blew me away, and it invigorated so much emotion in me. It was so powerful. And I was sitting beside my girlfriend. She was kind of holding my hand because I was on particular salient to myself because I was suicidal, and she understood that. So it was great to have kind of her there to support me. Like,
yeah.
I told other people that it brought me to tears. Some people's reaction was like yourself, like, oh, kind of head nodding, no way, interesting.
Yeah.
Other people's was, oh, all right, gay boy. Kind of, what the fuck? Yeah, crying is a normal part of human experience, you know? And it was, but yet there was some, like, effeminate or homosexual aspect that they projected on it, as if being effeminate or homosexual was a bad thing. It's obviously not. I think that's
just ingrained from hundreds or thousands of years of not expressing things like that, of like the whole construction of being masculine and all that sort of stuff. It's probably more so that.
Would you hold back tears?
I genuinely can't remember the last time I cried. Yeah, I wouldn't express myself really that way. I see no issue in it whatsoever.
Yeah.
Like, hold nothing against. Like, I'd be similar to that. Like, if someone wants to cry if it makes you feel better, or it's your way of raising points. But personally, I just generally don't ever really cry.
Yeah.
But it's not I don't cry because it's just the way I obviously maybe internalise things more so than I'm not as expressive.
Well, no, that's it. It's not an abnormal thing to not cry in the same way that it's not an abnormal thing to cry. When I talked it as a universal human experience, like you might remember the last time you cried, but there was a last time you cried.
Absolutely.
You might have been 6 months old, but it's a thing that everybody has done. And I think if you haven't, like, if you pop out of the womb and you're not bawling or you're not crying, like, the doctors kind of scratch their heads going, oh fuck.
Yeah. Must look up that poem by Shannon.
Yeah, I'll link it to you. But it's funny, now on reflection, just kind of spitballing here, I'm a walk and talk in contradiction, because I suppose I was talking about the solemnity around things. I suppose I was very serious when I was talking about, listen, I cried about this, and I was trying to remember, well, was that person being funny when they were like, oh, that's a bit weird, or oh, you're soft or something. But it was a gruffness, and I suppose in that instance it wouldn't have been appropriate to be like, ah, you were crying, oh. So it's important that we can laugh at things, but there is sometimes
there's a line.
There's an appropriate time.
Yeah,
like we can laugh about that idea now because I suppose the event isn't as fresh and it's not as of significant emotional salience to me. I suppose in that instance it was. So I think there will always be a potential time and a place where anything can be laughed at. But I suppose if you're expressing a bit of sensitivity to someone you care about, it would be nice to not laugh in their face when they're telling you about how they were crying because they were reminded of the times they wanted to kill themselves.
Just time and place, exactly.
You know.
That's interesting. That sounds like the poem The Book Thief. Have you ever read that book? It's a great book. But it's narrated by death. It's like you were saying, River Shannon, but there's like a famous line in it or whatever where it says, it kind of goes through the World War and kind of focuses on one character. There's a lot of trauma and stuff kind of. And then one of the famous lines in it is, death says, it's me who's haunted by humans as opposed to the other way around. So that just reminded me of it, that poem you're saying. But it's well worth to read. It's a great book.
mortality is something I have a very, very poor grasp on.
How do you mean?
I don't get it. I can't get my head around it. Not mortality. I can get my head around mortality. Actually, no problem. I phrased that wrong. What I don't get is bereavement. Bereavement blows my mind. I can't get my head around it.
Can you elaborate? Like what do you mean you can't get your head around? Like why people go through it, or why we're conditioned to it, or
how the how humans are supposed to interpret it. I don't. That's one thing I do not understand at all.
But you look at animals, like it is an inbuilt thing. I think it's natural. It's our instincts as much as, like, you look at animals bereave as well. You know, just like well-known cases of that or whatever. Even animals bereaving, even humans' deaths or whatever. You know, like dogs. And
grieving. Yeah,
or their mates or whatever. But like,
it's not.
Or is it more so the actual bereavement, the act of bereavement itself?
The act of someone close to you dying. Fascinates me.
I've been lucky, as I was saying earlier in our first talk, that I haven't had, you know, my granddad passing away was probably the only one that I like in close or immediate family or anything. I'm very lucky in that sense, but so I haven't like experienced that to the same extent, obviously, that you have or other people have. But like you can't, like, I can only imagine that. It is one of those things that's kind of hard to get your head around, or like what the why and the.
It's not so much the why. It's just it's the. I find it very hard to intuit the phenomenon of, you know, a relationship just basically ceasing, because one party is no longer exists, and kind of, you know, there's so much circuitry in your mind, in your brain, that's, I suppose, devoted to that person. There's so much energy and time invested in the relationship, and then it's just no more. It's a mental thing, and one thing that I have found quite therapeutic. I don't know if you have done it with your granddad, but unfortunately, I'm well acquainted with bereavement. My parents come from large families. And my father died as well, so I lost a lot of aunties and uncles, some in tragic circumstances, some in kind of, I suppose, relatively normal kind of illness circumstances or old age and stuff. But a practice that has helped me rationalise bereavement in recent years has been talking to people that aren't alive. Talking to dead people, like, and I feel like a bit of a lunatic.
I read a really good thing. I think it was just like a kind of a personal letter thing in a newspaper, an online publication, where it was discussing that exact thing, but it was saying that it's not, someone passing away isn't the death of a relationship, it's the death of a human body, whereas the relationship, all that stuff still exists obviously in your head, so you can still connect with these people. You might think you seem like a lunatic, but you're talking because you still have all that. You were saying about things ceasing, but it might be the human organism that ceases, but all those relationships and memories you have are still there. They don't cease generally. So, you know, you're saying you might feel like a lunatic talking to these people, but you still have all that stuff. That's still all there because it's within you, whatever. And as she said, you've invested in the other people, so it's not like that's all gone. It's just I don't know. It's like obviously it's different way of interacting, but it's still, all those emotions and all that stuff is still obviously still there because you've experienced it, and that doesn't cease, if you know what I mean. Yeah,
that's a deadly way of putting it. The relationship actually isn't terminated by one party dying. It's mad because I don't think it's any surprise to you. I'm a very secular character, and irreligious in pretty much every regard, and I wouldn't place much credence in an afterlife. Not that I think anybody shouldn't do that.
Of a similar disposition.
And you know, I'm not saying that my irreligiosity or my secularism is something to uphold. It works for me, but I actually speak out loud, particularly at people's graves, and I found it very, very useful. Very useful. Surprisingly useful. One day I randomly tried it. And I felt great after it. I felt really good. So I suppose, have you ever tried it with your granddad?
No, I probably never try it really, stuff like that. But I can see, like, I've heard of people doing that or whatever. I'm sure it's just projecting the things you're feeling inwardly, and you can feel, you can voice them. It's still making a sort of a connection.
Yeah.
So, like, I do understand the logic or whatever behind it, but wouldn't be something that I've.
And how did you or how do you experience grief in, I suppose, in the particular instance of your grandfather?
Well, as I was saying, like, I've been lucky, so that was, I say that, and he had been unwell, so, you know, it was a gradual, it wasn't a sudden, you know, it was a relatively peaceful death or whatever, stuff like that. So I was probably a teenager, like, I was obviously upset, like we all were, but I wouldn't have experienced grief on an enormous scale or whatever. Like, obviously that was upsetting, but, like, I don't know how I deal with it, because I haven't experienced, like, I've seen other people around me, or, you know, acquaintances or friends or whatever, suffer bereavements, and obviously you feel so sad by that when you're at the funerals and things like that, but I haven't personally, like, I don't know how I deal with something, because I haven't really.
So, but in terms of your grandfather, it sounds like you're able to rationalise it due to the general decline of health, and is it fair to say that you felt it made sense, it was parsed up in a sensible manner?
Yeah, like, he'd been unwell for a few years or whatever, so, like, you know, it is part of life that we have to accept. Like, death is part of life, but obviously it's different then for different circumstances. Like, if, you know, if people die in tragic circumstances or sudden circumstances, it's obviously different for other people then, processing different ways of processing. People have different beliefs and ways of processing things, so probably is such a generic sit in the fence thing to say, but it probably is so different for every single person.
Well, it is, and I think my experience is quite distinct from yours in that when you talk about it, it's kind of, you know, it's a natural way of life. It's kind of something that everyone deals with at some stage and will have to deal with. And so as I have a repulsion, I get annoyed by that. I know it is true. That's not debatable. But I think the truth value in that claim upsets me, infuriates me. That is the reality. Yeah. That's the way it is. And I think I don't know, maybe it's my own personal case that my consciousness isn't able to, you know, get my head around it, because one thing that might surprise people is that grief never got any easier, ever. Like, you know, one bereavement wasn't the last bereavement I had wasn't really easy. You know, I wasn't you know, desensitized to another one's gone. Sure, I'm okay. Loads of people have died before, so it's grand. You know, so
if anything, I'd imagine it'd have the opposite effect where.
Yeah, so sometimes it can kind of intensify the experience because it's like because you're familiar with that feeling of grief, and I suppose my curriculum vitae of dealing with grief hasn't been fantastic, so it brings up probably extremely painful experiences from the past. But yeah, I've talked about it I've talked about it before, just with one person, the whole idea of me not being able to get my head around bereavement. But I love that idea of the relationship, even continuing to flourish.
Yeah, I thought it was just very well put. Like, it is a thing obviously people all worry about and question, but it was just well put, whatever way. I'm just trying to recall the exact article. I might come across it. I might find it on my phone, whatever, and send it on to you. But I just thought, it was really.
I'd love to read and share it, because tragedy is an even more difficult thing to get me to kind of intuit. Like, when someone is well and then they're just all of a sudden they've died. Yeah. Absolutely. You know, it's a very. It is mind-boggling. Like, the whole thing is just. It's so crazy. Like, I kind of understand it from the individual sense. Like, you know, well, they just died. Yeah. But from the societal or from the familial and from the network perspective, it's just it's so weird. Like, they played such an important role, and that role remains, but I suppose the organism ceases to be.
Yeah. But like, would you, or is this too personal? I'm turning a host here for a second.
Yeah.
Would you find that you can discuss that? Not that it's a shared experience. Obviously, everyone experiences it different, but like with your family, say, with the bereavements that you've all suffered, like, is that something you can discuss with them, or you do discuss with them regularly, or is it very much a like?
It's not that it's definitely not taboo, but it's definitely a sensitive area.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mentioned how I discussed my not fascination but total bemusement with grief, and how I discussed that with someone, and that was my brother.
Yeah.
And he would have suffered a lot of the same bereavements I had, and we're very similar characters in many regards, but we do differ from our emotional experiences. We diverge there. So he kind of got it, but at the same time he didn't really. So like you said, everyone experiences grief, so he could definitely relate to it, but I suppose the intensity of my confusion was something he could understand why I was confused, but he didn't really get. He was like, "Whoa, you're really, really confused. Is it not just normal?" But I was, even from an empirical sense, like from a scientific and neuroscientific perspective,
science boy.
I was fascinated, like, by just the psychology of it, and how one is supposed to get their heads around it. Is there a path
or method
other than ignorance? And I suppose that question isn't fully answered. That idea of the relationship persisting, I feel is a good chunk of the picture, but maybe not the whole one, at least just yet. Maybe when I reflect on it more, it'll make sense.
And you're not the only one. Like, if you look at every race of humans, all the gods and all that is the way of explaining. It's the comforting thing of, this person's passed away. I can't wrap my head around it, but they're gone to this. Or they might, like, I'm not saying it's not true or it is true, but that's why probably like religion. It's there's a greater reason for this, and there's greater force at play, and all that stuff. That's what you can see the comfort in that for people who are devout believers. If they suffer bereavement, they think, well, my whoever it is to me is gone somewhere better, and I'm going to see them again afterwards. You can see the appeal. I know you personally aren't subscribing to that, but I'm not saying that's right or wrong. I'm not particularly religious at all myself either, so
I see the rationality, and I see the kind of coping mechanism aspect of it, but I suppose being an empiricist, it doesn't.
Being a scientist, I was just trying to say that.
As a scientist, I've received a lot of flack for a time in the past where I described myself as a scientist, as if that identified me with any sort of credential. Like that's I think I made this point before, but it's an important one, so I'm really trying to hammer it home. That I'm thoroughly glad that when I used that phrase as a scientist, that I was absolutely berated, and still am, because I deserve it. I deserve that beration, because identifying yourself seems to me, I think when people identify themselves as anything, they're putting themselves as if they have some special insight, and like, no, you don't. You don't. You're just another person,
a piece of paper
with another idea. I didn't even have the piece of paper that time. I was just, what I was trying to say is, from my perspective, which is largely based on empiricism, this is why I don't have credence in the idea of ghosts, which I think is what we were talking about, or the supernatural. But getting back to the idea of, you don't need credentials to talk about human experience. So if you don't need to be a clinical psychologist, a fucking qualified psychotherapist, or a psychiatric doctor, nurse, whatever, to articulate any of these ideas. These are normal stuff. So I don't want that barrier to be there. I think that was a good addition. Yeah, that was much better than the first one. Yeah. I'd nearly just not go with the first one at all and just go with that. Yeah. I'm going to listen to both, and it might be a case of the second one being more useful
Yeah.
with the first one being available.